Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I am Mark DeVoe, and welcome everyone. And thank you to everyone who supports this podcast. You know who you are. You're the people who sign up to our Patreon page and get lots of lovely goodies. And you're also those wonderful Academy members of the Bestseller Academy as well. We are very, very thankful to be here. And we thank you for showing up and listening again this week. We have a fun-filled, packed episode for you. But I must say, Mr. Stay, that was, in 5 and a bit years, the loudest, most bombastic hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment I've ever heard. It's brilliant. Sounds like it's been a good week.
The caffeine is kicking in. Yeah. Well, it has. Oh, well, you know what I've the sort of week I've had, but I can't talk about half of it on the podcast because none of it's been announced yet.
If only people could be a fly on the wall to our pre-red light record button discussions on the podcast. Folks, if only you would know and hear the things going on that we can't yet talk about, but you will hear because we always talk about it eventually, don't we? But there's some really good news that I heard about an audiobook that that was part of something you've mentioned a few months ago, wasn't it?
Well, this is the wonderful LJ Ross, who's been on the podcast. We need to get her back on. She published this anthology, Everyday Kindness, which is a collection of uplifting tales to brighten your day, and all proceeds from this go to shelter. And the hardcover came out, I think, in November. Over 50 stories, some amazing authors, and me. So, you get LJ Ross, C.L. Taylor, all sorts of brilliant. Queever's in there, Queever McDonald. And I knew there was an audiobook coming. And I just thought, maybe they'll just get a handful of, narrators in, and they'll talk. They'll get them in and do them. A mixture of men and women or whatever. Never ever underestimate LJ Ross, because she messaged me earlier today. She said, "Do you want to know who's narrating your audiobook?" And I said, "Oh yes, please. That'd be lovely." And she waited before she replied. And then she said, Julie Walters.
What?
Dame Julie bloody Walters. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Now I'm still tingling from the fact that
oh my goodness,
the legend that is Julie Walters. And let's talk about Julie Walters.
Shirley Valentine.
No, not Shirley Valentine. She was educated. No, that was Pauline Collins.
Oh dear.
Educating Rita, of course, and working with Victoria Wood as well. And Victoria Wood, those her sketches were one of the first books I got, and I read and studied the sketches and her comedy and everything. And for younger viewers, of course, she's Mrs. Weasley in the Harry Potter films.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I have some history with Julie, actually, because spill
the beans, Mark. Spill the beans.
When I was at Orion, we published her autobiography, and I got to meet her a couple of times. But I've been heckled by Julie Walters.
There's not many people that can say that.
No, quite. It was the 2004 sales conference at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne, and I was quite new at Orion. I wanted to make a good impression, and they said, "Oh, we're going to have a quiz. They're going to have dinner, and they're going to do a quiz. With any volunteers?" Everyone stepped back and I was left standing. So I thought, okay, right, I'm going to do a quiz. I love a quiz. It went on far too long, far too long. Everyone's eating dinner, and I'm halfway through it. I'm thinking, I've completely misjudged this. That dread.
My career is over officially.
I've completely misjudged this. One of the people who was supposed to be helping me was completely drunk. When I sort of looked to them for help, and they looked at me, and when someone's so drunk, one eye goes that way and another eye goes that way. So I was like, gosh. They're no help. So anyway, I'm gonna persevere. And I picked up one of the cards to answer and it was the penultimate round or whatever. And the question started. I said, "How long?" And a voice from the darkness came out and said, "Not as long as this bloody quiz." And it was Julie Walters. Got the biggest laugh of the night. And Michael Palin was in the audience. I was just like, kill me now. But we spoke about it after. She was completely lovely. And now she's reading my story. 2 Chickens for Laura Longarms is the title of the story. And now she's read Dame Julie bloody Walters to give her a full title.
That's unbelievable. And BAFTA award winner. I'm just looking at her creds here, like 2 international Emmy awards, BAFTA Fellowship, Golden Globe. Bonkers. She's
a legend. She is a genuine national treasure.
And you know what's so great about, I mean, we grew up with her, didn't we, really? I mean, she's one of my, shout out to my mum here, but she's like, I think she's Julie Walters' biggest fan. But yeah, we grew up with her. And the thing about Julie Walters is that she has the most incredibly unique voice. I mean, you would pick her voice out in amongst thousands. And she's going to be doing your audiobook. I can't believe it. Has she done audiobooks before? Do you know?
Yes, she has. She has. And she did her own for the autobiography as well. Of course. But this, as I said, she's not the only voice on there. So we've got people like Gemma Whelan on there, people will know from Game of Thrones, Jonathan Keeble, Catherine Drysdale, Richard Armitage, who was in, the Hobbit films, of course, So Eva Pope, some really, really good names in there. But I got Julie Walters.
You got Julie Walters. Crazy. I'm just looking at some of the films that she's done as well. For people, we've got Mamma Mia, Paddington, The Secret Garden, Calendar Girls, Mary Poppins Returns, obviously Educating Rita, and the second Mamma Mia, and it just goes on and on. All the Harry Potter movies. And Romeo and Juliet. Buster, do you remember that one with Phil Collins?
Phil Collins,
Oh my goodness!
Like I say, she's a legend. She's an absolute legend. So so that was a nice bit of news that I can actually talk about today.
News.
So
absolutely really fantastic. Holy moly! Congratulations! And how exciting is that going to be? I mean, the profile of that book is going to, it's a really interesting thing that LJ's done because obviously you put the book out. It's a bit like music where you kind of. You put out the single and then you drop a remix, a bit later on to kind of re-energize everything. And I think not putting out the audiobook at the same time as the actual book is actually probably quite a smart move because you get to do 2 individual events and you can, PR those events. You can get the buzz to talk about it on podcasts again. I mean, all of those good things that happen. So yeah, is that fairly normal? When audiobooks... Is it usually the same time or sometimes even before?
From when I worked at Orion, Audible got a bit miffed if you had a different publication date for the audio because they said our customers want it day and date.
Do you know what?
The same day.
Back in the day, it's a bit like when we used to get movies, DVDs 6 months, after the people in the US did. Do you remember that? It was like, you look at all the great films coming out in America and you'd be like, we might get to see those maybe in like 9 or 12 months.
Exactly, yeah.
They'd be out on DVD before they even arrived in the cinema sometimes, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Craziness. So, it's, but I think, I wonder if Louise LJ has been planning this for months and probably said to them, look, it's going to be worth the wait. We've got some amazing people narrating this. So, wow. So yeah.
Well, watch this space. We'll have to see how that goes. When's it coming out? Do you know?
February 7th. I've just pre-ordered it, actually. Hang on. February 17th, I think. Let's have a look. Yes, 17th of February. Yes.
Excellent.
On my phone.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll give that another plug. And congratulations to LJ Ross for making that happen. That's
incredible.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely brilliant. Brilliant stuff, Mark. Well, let's dive into this week's amazing guest. Tell us a bit about Shona Kinsella.
Shona Kinsella is, she's wonderful. She's the author of epic fantasy, the Vessel of Caladine series, dark Scottish fantasy, Petra MacDonald and the Queen of the Fae. She's also a British Fantasy Awards shortlisted author for her book, The Flame and the Flood. And she's now turned her hand to non-fiction with her forthcoming book, Outlander and the Real Jacobites, which is coming from Pen and Sword at the end of March, which explores the real history behind Dinah Gabaldon's Outlander series. So we talk about researching history in a lockdown, the highs and lows of crowdfunding, getting the rights back to your books, and that moment when you get some news that leaves you standing speechless in your kitchen staring at the phone, which happened to me today.
Sounds like a book called Back to Reality, isn't it? In the kitchens. Brilliant stuff. So let's dive in and listen to the lovely Shona Kinsella chatting with Mark.
Shona Kinsella, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm tickety-boo. Thank you for asking. I'm very excited about your new book. We're going to go through your whole career. This is a wonderful, listeners. You're going to love this because this is the tale of someone who is going to write whatever fate throws at them. And but a fantastic, very exciting new book. And this is non-fiction. You've written fiction before, but this new book is non-fiction. Outlander and the Real Jacobites, Scotland's Fight for Freedom. And, of course, Outlander, we all know because of Diana Gabaldon's epic books and the TV series that came from that. Although, I mean, I was lucky enough to have tea with Diana Gabaldon a few years ago because I worked for one of her publishers, and she was telling me the whole thing was inspired by seeing Fraser Hines on Doctor Who and his kilt. So, I know she's done a lot of research into it, but, she's not a Scot. The historical accuracy, it's there, but obviously it's a fantasy. Yeah. Here, you're telling us the real story. So tell us about this new book.
Sure. So just round about the start of the lockdown in 2020, I got an email from Chris Brown, who works for Pen and Sword Publishing, and they were looking specifically for fantasy authors or authors with a strong grasp of the fantasy genre to write about the history behind some sort of popular fantasy series. So Outlander sprung to mind because I just love it. Nothing at all to do with how handsome Jamie Fraser is in a kilt. So and the Jacobite history, that period of Scottish history is really fascinating to me. It was a real sort of turning point for Scotland's political landscape. So I said, sure, I can do that. I can write a book about Scottish history. And then I imagined myself going off on research trips all around the country and, visiting the National Archives and lots of historic landmarks and what have you. And then we spent most of 2020 in various forms of lockdown, so I didn't get to do very much of that stuff. And I had to do the vast majority of my research online. But we have wonderful, wonderful archivists at places like the National Archives and Historic Scotland who are digitising a lot of these materials. So I was able to actually view letters between Bonnie Prince Charlie and his father, King James.
Oh, wow.
Online, and the memoirs of some of the key players like Lord George Murray and Lord Elcho. These were high-ranking Jacobites that were with the Prince all through his campaign. These things have all been digitised and are available to read online. Anyone can go and read them, and it's so exciting.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Do send us a link to that, and we'll put a link in the show notes if people want to dig into that. How aware were you of this period of history anyway? Because I went to school in England. They only teach us about World War I and World War II when we won. They don't teach us when the English were badly behaved with the redcoats and, in various parts of the world. So how aware were you as a Scot of this period of history anyway?
Well, so our teaching at school is similar to yourself in England. We get the two world wars.
And a World Cup final, yes.
So I didn't learn much about it at school, but I've always had just a background interest in Scottish history. And as did my parents. So I visited lots of old buildings throughout my childhood as my parents dragged us around castles and museums and things like that. So it just kind of seeped in over time.
Yeah.
So, and there's Bonnie Prince Charlie, certainly his memory sort of lives on very much in the romantic imagination of Scotland. So I was quite aware of him, not quite so much aware of how he came to be rebelling in the first place. The circumstances around that were new to me when I started researching it.
And what's it like working with, you've worked with various fiction publishers. Here you're working with Pen and Sword, who are, one of the best military history publishers out there. They really know their stuff with this. You spoke about online resources and stuff like that. Were they able to help to sort of guide you as a first-time, historical non-fiction writer? What sort of help and assistance did they give you?
They didn't help so much with the research. Like, I found a lot of things on my own and went to them and said, "This is what I'm using," and they said, "Fab."
Right.
That's great materials that you found. So great. The thing that I was most anxious about was getting the tone right. So they didn't want a really dry academic text. This is very much a history for the layperson book, which is part of the reason that they didn't want an academic to write it. They wanted a different perspective on it. So I was nervous about the tone. And at one point I sent a few chapters to my commissioning editor there, Claire Hopkins, and said, I don't know if I'm just messing this all up. And she came back and was like, "I need more. This is great." So they were really supportive, like, in that process. And because of my inexperience writing that type of book before, I was quite nervy, anxious that I wasn't going to do it justice. It's such a big topic, but they were really helpful and kind. Put up with me.
And having been through that process and it being very different to writing fiction, would you do it again?
I think if the opportunity came up to write about something that I was really fascinated with, then yes, I would definitely do it again.
Brilliant. Let's talk about your fiction career, which absolutely fascinates me. You write the same genre as me. You write fantasy, and we share a publisher. We're both Unbound authors. Now, listeners, long-term listeners will know all about Unbound. It's crowdfunding. I found it really hard work. It's like going around begging for money for 9 months or whatever. So it can be tricky, but you get a beautiful book at the end of it. It gets into shops, it gets online and all sorts of places. And I'm very, very proud of the book that The End of Magic, the book I wrote. But you got there before me, Shona. You wrote Ashale Rising, which was published by Unbound in 2017, I believe. Can you tell us about the events leading up to that and the whole crowdfunding experience and how you found it?
Sure. So it was all a bit of an accident to begin with.
I hear that a lot with Unbound.
I had not long finished writing the first draft of Ashale Rising, and Unbound were holding a Twitter pitching hour. Right. And I just kind of stumbled across, I had followed them on Twitter. I was really interested in what they were doing. I thought the model was really interesting. So I came across this pitching hour and I thought, I saw them giving feedback to people, so they were saying, well, that's interesting, but how do you make this stand out more? Or your one sentence pitch doesn't tell us what the story's about, kind of thing. So they were giving useful feedback. So I thought, well, I've not tried writing any pitch or anything like this before. Ashale Rising was the first novel I'd ever written. So I thought, well, I'll pitch them, and it's obviously going to be a no, but they'll give me some feedback and help me refine my pitch. And I pitched them and he said, "Great, send us the manuscript." And then I panicked because it was just the first draft. Never ever send your first draft. So I emailed them the manuscript and with a note saying, "This is just the first draft, and right. I know that the beginning's not quite right. These are the changes that I plan to make." And sent it off. And again, assuming it was going to be a thanks, but no thanks. But I was hopeful that I might get some feedback.
Yes.
like the edits you're planning are the right way to go, or are not the right way to go. But they came back and said, "We'd really like to publish it."
How inconvenient.
So it was just the biggest shock. I remember I was standing in my living room, the email came through to my phone, and I opened it and I couldn't even speak. My sister was there, and I just showed her the phone and she read it, and then she started screaming, "You're like, yeah, you're getting published." And I was just, it was totally unexpected. So, and then crowdfunding, of course, that's quite the endeavour.
It is, yes.
So,
how did you tackle that?
With reckless abandon. So initially they said that we had 3 months to raise the
Yes, that rings a bell, yeah.
the crowdfunding thing. It was 90 days. Although I think they're actually quite good about extending that time if you're making progress. But I was so focused on the 90 days. So every day I was posting about it on, Facebook, on Twitter. Up until that point, I wasn't even really on social media.
Yeah.
I was on Twitter, but not very active, and I wasn't on Facebook at all. So I set up there and started posting every day, posting about not just like, please give me your money. I would post snippets of Ashale. I was at that time doing the edits that I knew it needed. So I would, take out a wee section from what I was working on that day. And I blogged about the process. I blogged about how I came to write the book in the first place. I offered exclusive short stories as rewards. I harassed my family and friends. I did a few readings at local libraries and things like that.
Right, brilliant. And
I got there. I raised the funding on day 88.
Nice.
So,
time to spare.
And it was just such an emotional thing, knowing that so many people offered their support.
Yeah,
it was wonderful, really touching. And I mean, you've done it yourself, so
yes.
You know what it's like.
Yeah, and it like I say, you do get a gorgeous book at the end of it. And what was now? One of the things we hear a lot from Unbound authors, in particular me, I'm the first one to say, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I don't have to do it again. It's that thing I've compared it to. You if you work in an office, there'll be someone who does a marathon, and then you will sponsor them, and then a month later they come back to doing another marathon and another 5K run and everything, and eventually, people's goodwill starts to wither a bit. So it can be tricky the second time round. Did you have a go second time round, and how did that pan out for you?
I did. So Ashale Rising is the first book in a trilogy, and I tried crowdfunding Ashale Fallen, which is book 2. And I kind of had hoped that I would have found enough readers through the first book that they would pledge for the second book, because they would want to find out what happened next, which certainly was the case with some of the people came forward with me. But I think a lot of the just readers that I had acquired, rather than people that I personally know, they were just like, I'll buy it when it's in the shops. Or, why would I pledge £20 for it now when I can get it for $2.99 when it's an ebook on Amazon?
Right. Yeah. They learn, don't they? Yeah. And to be fair, Shona, that is not an uncommon story. I think in the crowdfunding world, a second book can be really, really tough. But then the next year, I saw that you published In a Flash, which is a collection of flash fiction. Is this the sort of thing you were doing before Ashale Rising came out, or was it something you were doing at the time?
I was sort of doing it alongside. So I had set up a blog not long before I started crowdfunding, and then I used it quite actively while I was crowdfunding for Ashale Rising. And one of the things I did on the blog was Flash Friday. So I wrote a flash fiction piece on a Friday, or every other Friday, I think it was. And people seemed to really enjoy those. That was the most popular day on the blog for traffic. Most people came on a Friday, and that was the most popular post. So I put together a collection of them and stuck it up on Amazon. I do almost no marketing, and it still sells. So
brilliant.
Obviously,
my favourite kind of book.
People enjoy something they can read in 5 minutes.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And then following that, you sign up with Fox Spirit Books, and you publish 2 books with those. There's Petra MacDonald and the Queen of the Fae, and The Flame and the Flood, which is a British Fantasy Awards nominee. I'm just going to salute you there. Tell us about the shift to Fox Spirit and those two books and how they worked out for you.
Okay, so I wrote Petra MacDonald and the Queen of the Fae late 2017 while I was still writing Ashiel Falling. I actually stopped writing Ashiel Falling to do Petra. Fox Spirit there's like a wish list market for me because I love the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
They post really interesting, on the edges things, work that plays with tropes in ways that are unfamiliar to us and things. So I've always been quite keen to publish with Fox Spirit. And around about the end of September 2017, I found out they were having an open submissions month for October. And I had nothing to submit. Right.
Again, listeners will be very familiar with this.
But I was determined that I wanted something. In Fox Spirit, I've been publishing novellas for years.
Right.
And I really enjoy working in that length. I think you have to be really kind of to the point, very tight with your prose to get a whole story in at that length. So I challenged myself to write a novella in 30 days, and I did. I got up at like 5 a.m. every morning to write for an hour before my kids got up. And I wrote the full thing in 22 days, and then that gave me 8 days for feedback from beta readers and some tweaks. And I submitted it on the last day of October, which was the last day of the open submissions period.
Wow, stop everything. There's so much to unpack it. We love stories like this. I mean, our podcast started with, not 30 days. We gave ourselves a year to write a novel, but you write a novella in 30 days. I mean, it's very NaNoWriMo, I guess. But so you're getting up at the crack of dawn before the family is up. Were you targeting yourself with a word count every day? And did you have an idea of what you wanted to write, or were you just pantsing the whole thing or outlining?
I had a really rough idea. So there had been, earlier in the year, there was a call for Rebellion Publishing. We're looking for people to do work for hire stuff. And I had come up with an idea for that I then didn't go on to write, but I had this idea about a Scottish woman who lives on an island, paints and things, and she uses her art to connect with her gods. So she paints while in trance, and she receives a message from the gods that there's a child in trouble and she has to go off and deal with it all.
Brilliant.
So that was about as much of it as I had at the start of my 30 days. I gave myself a challenge to write about 1,000 words a day.
Right.
A novella sitting around about 30,000 words is a reasonable length. Some days I wrote a bit more, some days a bit less. But it came in at the end 27,000 words in 22 days. So obviously a bit more than 1,000 words a day averaged out.
And not only that, you left yourself 8 days for an edit. Not only that, feedback from beta readers. I mean, I've got great beta readers, and I'll drop them a line and they'll be like, lovely, I'll read this in a couple of weeks. Is that okay? Whereas you'd be going, no, I need you to read this now. Did you queue them up? Were they in on the 30 days thing? Were they all prepped and ready to go?
Yeah, I had a few friends. Well, I posted on Facebook first at the start of the month and said, I'm writing a thing that has to be in by the end of the month. Are any of my friends free? Will you be free in the last week of the month to read a novella with a day or two turnaround?
Wow.
And a couple of people said, yeah, I can do it. Because that's the great thing about the writing community, though, isn't it? We all help each other if we can. So so I had people who were quite keen to see me complete it, I think. It's a crazy challenge.
So that was the first book, Petra MacDonald and the Queen of the Fae. I assume you had a bit more time to work on The Flame and the Flood.
Yeah.
How did that work out?
So that one, I saw someone on Twitter talking about how they would really like to see more industrial settings in fantasy. So, like fantasy is very commonly set in the medieval period.
Yeah.
Same old.
Yes, guilty as charged.
And someone was speaking about how they would really like to see more industrial fantasy. So I was kind of thinking, well, what makes something fantasy? Like, what are the key elements of a fantasy story? And I thought, magic, really. It's really, really hard to have fantasy without magic, or alternate races, like elves and goblins and things. So I thought, well, how could you do an industrial fantasy then? So you've got industry and magic. How does that fit together? So then I started to think about factories and magic and capitalism, and how would capitalism interact with magic in an industrialized way? So, I mean, it's going to enslave magic users, isn't it?
It's not going to go well, is it?
So then I thought about how magic users in The Flame and the Flood, they have an affinity for a particular natural element. So it might be wood, it might be fire, water. And they can magically influence that element, make it grow, shape it, make it, like water, they could make it run the wrong direction or run fast. So how would factories use that? So they're going to enslave the magic users because they're able to do things that normal labourers can't do, and then use them really badly. But also in this society, you've got like an upper class. So the upper class, their magic users become artisans and are well paid and lauded all over the world for their artistry, whereas the lower class magic users are accused of crimes, whether they committed them or not, and then forced into slavery in the factories. And my main characters are people who run an underground railroad to sneak the slaves out of the city.
Right.
So I came up with that in about a day.
Right.
And then I wrote the novella in about 45 days.
Wow. You don't muck about, do you, Shona? Fantastic. And then you're a British Fantasy Awards nominee for that book. Tell us how that came. Was that you standing in the kitchen staring at your phone again, unable to speak? Was it another one of those moments?
Oh, it's even worse, right? When the news came through, I had COVID at the time, and I was in bed really, really ill with COVID. I was like in the first few days of it, and I was really ill, high fever, drifting in and out of consciousness and what have you. And an email came through to my phone, and because I'm on the British Fantasy Society committee, so at that point it was as the editor of BFS Horizons, their fiction publication. So the committee get the award shortlist a few days before it goes live. So the award shortlist came through to my phone with very special congratulations to our own Shona. And I was like, what for? And I had to read the thing about 3 times before I saw my own name on the shortlist. And then I thought it was a fever dream because I was so ill. And they were all emailing me saying congratulations. I was like, it's not real. Surely it's not. So it took a few days for that to sink in.
I don't blame you. I do not blame you. Oh, fantastic. And congratulations on that. I mean, the thing with being an awards nominee is they can never take that away for you. It's just amazing. Now, we know what's coming next with Outlander and the Real Jacobites. The Ashale Rising was going to be the first of a trilogy. I noticed there are beautiful covers up on your website. It's one of these things where with Unbound, I think you have to wait 5 years till you get the rights back. Is it a question of waiting until that happens and then working on books 2 and 3?
I got the rights back this year. So this was year 5 since Ashale Rising was published. So I got the rights back, and the very nice people at Grimbold Books are going to publish the entire trilogy. So early next year. So basically, they've been waiting for me to finish writing book 3. Ashiel Rising will be re-released in January. Ashiel Falling will be out around about March. And then Ashiel Soaring, which is the final book in the trilogy, will be released in June.
That's amazing. Now, you're saying next year, we're recording this in December, so that's Ashiel Rising will be January 2022, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Ace. Fantastic. So listeners, by my reckoning, looking at our schedule, should be out now. Grab a copy now. Shona, it's been an absolute delight speaking to you, and it's an incredible career. And I think you are just getting warmed up, just getting started. So I can't wait to see what happens next. Folks, Outlander and the Real Jacobites is out there for pre-order probably, or it might be out now, whatever. Go to Shona's website, shonakinsella.com. All the buy buttons and pre-order buttons are there. Go find it there. Shona, thank you so much for speaking to us today, and hope to speak to you again real soon.
Okay, thank you.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Wow. I tell you what, the more I hear about this crowdfunding journey, the more I think about just what an incredible achievement it is to get to the other side of it. It's quite a phenomenal undertaking, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, we've got a thing in our social media at the end where one of our one of our BXP team has just, she's now packing books for her crowdfunding, she's Kickstarter campaign. So we'll talk about that later. But it's to do one is hard, to do a second is incredibly hard. So I salute anyone who gets through that. And it takes a certain kind of not shamelessness, determination to get it done.
I think determination and belief as well in your book, but also I think you're right. It takes a certain kind of person to be able to do it, and it takes an even different kind of person to be able to kind of repeat that process. I think because it's something that takes a lot of wind out of your sails. I think in terms of it's so intense, because I have done some crowdfunding. I've done a number of crowdfunding projects, in and around. I mean, in some ways, I guess we kind of crowdfunded Jen's book, the very last monster book, but we didn't do it with a deadline and a ticking clock. I mean, there was a deadline, obviously, to order the book, but it wasn't kind of like up there with, it's that will we make it or not type pressure. I think that the pressure cooker, which is the real challenge for a lot of people, and it's very stressful. And I think, having done it in music a few times with a number of different artists, I've noticed that, you have to take a bit of time to recover afterwards. It's kind of like the equivalent of doing NaNoWriMo, but fundraising in some ways, isn't it?
Actually, it's a very good analogy. Yeah, you've got to do a certain amount every day. I sort of targeted myself at least one, new donation per day. And,
right.
Because if you don't, you again, it's about keeping up momentum. You've got to keep that money coming in.
And the other thing is, it's just a natural law that happens with crowdfunding, in that you get a massive amount of interest out the gate, and you have this big serotonin hit of like, God, blimey, I'm like 20% or 40% to my target, and then tumbleweeds for like everything from like day 3 to probably like the last 8 hours, or maybe the last day or two. And even Shona kind of confirmed that by saying, she managed to close it. I think it was the day before, wasn't it? So there is just this natural thing that happens, and it is based around the incredible effect of scarcity and deadlines. Our world is driven. We've said this many times before, folks, but here's a link, because you can use this when you write your book. It's not just about crowdfunding, but if you create a deadline, if you do a dream declaration on the podcast, for example, you're in essence tapping into the power of deadlines, because people don't act until the sale ends must end in 2 hours. It's like every single shop in the world, every bed shop in the world uses it continuously, 24/7, every day of the year. Sale, must end Friday. It's the same thing, and it makes us act as human beings. We are hardwired. We are hardwired to scarcity. But it's a bit of a rocky ride when you're the person crowdfunding that book and you're looking at the figures thinking, it's not going to happen. Right? About 4 days before, it's like, what did you feel like when did yours close? When you did End of Magic, did it collect? Do you remember how soon it got funded 100%? Because
I'll have to put a link in the show notes to a blog that I did, because it was fairly early-ish, and then I went beyond the
stretch goal.
You can order more. But what I did, I had a spreadsheet of basically everyone I knew, and then I'd have a column saying that they'd pledged, and then
or
I had a column, or completely disowned me, or not replied.
You really find out who your friends are when you do a crowdfunding campaign.
New phone, who dis? And I sort of decided I would chase them 3 times. And I had a kind of a rota where I'd just say, "Hey, how are you? Just checking." And what would happen?
Haven't spoken to you in 25 years.
25 years. But can you send me 20 quid?
And they're thinking, God, did he lend me some money at the tuck shop back in the 80s?
So and then I'd chase it. And what would often happen actually is that people would go, "Oh, I've been meaning to do this. Thanks for the reminder." So where you felt like you were harassing them,
yes,
people have incredibly busy lives, and this idea that they're always sitting in front of a screen and being in a position where they can donate money. I did discover that doing it at the beginning of the month was quite a good idea, because a lot of people have just got paid and they're a bit flush. Whereas when you ask at the end of the month, they're skint, or overdrawn, or worrying about this, that, and the other. So that helped.
So one tip maybe is to never do a crowdfunding campaign that ends the last couple of days or at the end of the month, because you'd naturally think,
Christmas.
or before Christmas, or around the 18th of January, which is, well, not the 18th, but the 17th, which was Blue Monday, they call it, which is the day that everyone gets their credit card bills and the like. But I think, there's a tendency to think, when you just sit down and plan a campaign, you think, well, I'll do it in May or I'll do it in October. So you'll naturally probably finish the campaign on the last day of the month because it's tidy. But, from your experience, that's probably a very unwise thing to do. Like have it mid-month maybe. And catch people at either end, so to speak, when those two big moments are. But I'm curious though, listeners out there, if you're listening to this, say, I've done crowdfunding, I keep I've launched my career on crowdfunding, I've sold 1 million books crowdfunding. We want to hear from you, because we'd love to learn more about some of the maybe more unusual crowdfunding campaigns that have happened. Always curious about some kind of unique ways to crowdfund. But also, if you're a seasoned veteran at this, hey, maybe we'll get you on the podcast. Come on and chat about how you've succeeded with crowdfunding and how you get over that difficult 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 10th book. What do you do beyond asking friends and family? Because that's the problem, isn't it? It's once you've kind of used that, you alluded to that, it kind of dry. I mean, you can only go so far, right? And friends
it's interesting. You see comic books do incredibly well at this, because there's a community of people who will. Crowdfunding's almost become a norm for independent comic book artists and writers worldwide, because they just can't get it off the ground otherwise. There's so few avenues to get published. Board games as well. Now, a lot of people who launch board games on Kickstarter. And again, there's a whole gaming community who are desperate for new material. Whereas books, as Shona said, and I had exactly the same thing. She'd say to people, I've got a book coming out. Can you pay for it now? And they'd say, I'll pay for it when it comes out. Why am I remember, explaining to however many people, that no. But if you don't pay for it, it doesn't get published. And they're like, well, why isn't the publisher? It's a crowdfunding thing. What's crowdfunding? So, you had all these hoops to jump through. Whereas if you have a community that's used to it, that, in fact, I remember one of the supporters for End of Magic, Naomi, and she's in the academy as well. She was telling me because one of the things I offered was lunch with me, and she snapped it up. And we had a really lovely sort of pub lunch. We had a really nice chat, and she was telling me that she supports people who make handbags and make craft stuff, and she's constantly supporting people on Kickstarter with different projects. So there are communities out there. I just think in the book world, we're so entrenched in doing things the same old way that it's getting over that hump to explain people, no, we're doing it different this time.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people hear we're doing it different, they think, oh, there's a risk. Should I get involved?
I think one of the big things as well is if you look at a lot of the, I always remember this one campaign. I'm a beekeeper, and I remember this Kickstarter campaign. I think it was the biggest Kickstarter campaign ever, I think, at the time. And it was a guy had invented a new kind of beehive, which became super easy to use, and you could use it in urban settings, and people probably think, oh yeah, I remember seeing that. I think one of the really interesting things about it is when you do a Kickstarter around something like a product or a board game, often the draw is that you're kind of getting in and you're getting it before everyone else has got it. Maybe it'll be it might be a limited edition and it might never go out. But with books, we all know that books eventually get released and will go on Amazon and do. So it's maybe Kickstarter campaigns, crowdfunding, maybe that's why people don't jump in and support things up front.
That's a very good point.
And so that's a challenge I think that authors will have whenever they go into doing that. It's like, I remember seeing Brandon Sanderson doing a Kickstarter campaign, but what he created was some incredibly amazing books. Did you remember seeing that as well?
Yes, Mark? It was a really high-end edition of one of his books, wasn't it? Yeah,
mental. And I think it was
strictly limited, and yeah.
And what did he do? He blew it out. I might be wrong here, but I think I'm going to look it up. I don't want to say.
Oh,
it was a ridiculous amount of money he raised, wasn't it?
Yeah, he raised everything he neaded in an afternoon, if I recall.
Yeah, but it was off the charts. Here it is: Way of the King's 10th anniversary leather-bound edition. 29,778 backers pledged. You ready for this, Mark?
Go on.
Hang on a minute. What did he actually want to raise? He wanted to raise 250,000.
Wow.
Which is huge. Ambitious. I mean, that's $250,000.
Make a movie.
He raised, you ready for this? Pledged $6.78 million to help bring this project to life. $6.78 million on a Kickstarter campaign, selling a 10th year of Stormlight Archive with Brandon Sanderson. So these were, and the first pledge level was like $10 for the digital novella. And that had 4,100 backers. But then you go down, you keep going. Like the $50 one was the physical Stormlight novella, 3,400 backers. And then the same for the leather-bound and swag $200 pledge, 3,400 people. And it keeps going, another $200 one, a $250 one. 5,000 people took the $250 pledge of a signed leather-bound. Right? But these are people, I think, a lot of these people are probably, obviously they're huge fans, but I bet you there's a few book collectors in there thinking,
oh, yeah, of course.
Get some of that.
But, they're all punters,
I know. And it keeps going. There's so many different variations of it. $300, $500, 1,000 people took the $500 signed and numbered leather down. It's just kind of minor variations, but 6.7 million. And people say you can't make money out of books. I mean, now Brandon's obviously got a big following, so that
he's
helps.
quite popular.
He's quite popular,
yes.
But but I'm thinking that he's had two. I think this was a direct campaign. I don't know if this went through a publisher. So
no, I think he has his own publishing company. He's that big.
But he's he's had to build up a list of people, right? That's the other thing about indie. If you're an indie author, you should know who your readers are. And the problem with sites like Amazon is Amazon holds all that information to themselves. Thank you very much. Yeah. So again, going back to what we've always talked about, you've got to start building your list. You've got to somehow get people from inside your book that they bought on Amazon to your personal author mailing list, so that if you ever want to do something like Brandon's done, you too can raise $7 million bucks. But do you know what I mean? But it shows the power of having that direct communication and that direct relationship with your readers. Absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. Now, the other thing that Shona talked about was rights, and I found that a very, very interesting subject, because a lot of people don't really, I mean, especially newer authors, you don't really think about that. You're just excited to get your book out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, you've worked in publishing for like 20 plus years, Mark. Rights is a big thing, isn't it?
It's huge. It's one of the ways you make money, by selling rights here, there, and everywhere, which is why when I do a book deal, we tend to, it's becoming more common, you tend to hang on to the film and TV rights, because they're, your agent, or me in my case, we'll try and sell them and get them out there. A lot of publishers aren't terribly good at selling film rights, although they all have a good rights department who will have contacts in that world. You used to hang on to the audio rights, but actually it's become a bit of a deal breaker that publishers like to get the audio for the same reason we were talking about earlier. They like to have that day and date thing and have some control over it, otherwise it becomes a bit of a headache. But yes, the rights are assigned to the publisher. You are essentially assigning the rights to the publisher for a limited period of time. It's usually 5 years, and then it comes up for renewal and what have you. There's often a little clause. The thing that's changed all this, of course, is ebooks. There's often a little clause where it used to say, if the book is still in print, you can't get your rights back. So, the publisher prints 100 copies, print on demand, and they retain the rights for that book. But now with digital, sometimes it just that it never goes out.
It's forever. I was going to say it's almost like a little
POD
cheeky
and stuff like that. Yeah,
wow.
So it's
you've got to be really careful about those types of contract clauses, right?
That's why you need an agent to look over.
Literally get your clause into you, and you.
But for generally after 5 years, you can say, I want my rights back, and do what Shona's done. Now, she mentioned that her trilogy is out. I've just had a look. It's not out quite yet. But do check out her website, shonakinsella.com, for the latest news there. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking about with the end of Magic. I've still got about 2.5 years to go, I think. In that, once that time is up, I'd like to take that back and do fun things with the end of Magic, and maybe write sequels or what have you, and self-publish those. So it's a thing that a lot of authors don't realize. They think, oh, that publisher owns that book, but no, you are letting them have it for a short, limited period of time, and it's your precious thing, and you should think long and hard about it before you give it to them. Because I know a lot of the bigger publishers are absolutely desperate to retain as many rights as possible, and they're going around buying up the estates of dead authors as well. Interesting. Because they don't need to print these things anymore. They can put them on a digital list. And I mean, you look at the Gollancz Gateway list, which is most of it is dead science fiction authors, which the families are happy to say, yeah, sure, give us some money. You can have all these books, and then it gives them a stream of income. And
how does that work, Mark, though? Because isn't there a certain amount, after a certain number of years, doesn't the copyright of an author's work go into public domain?
In the UK, it's 75 years after the author's death.
So you're talking about when before the 75 years is up?
Yeah. So a lot of these people were big in the 50s. They've only been, might only been dead 20 odd years or whatever. So I mean, some of them still alive, bless them. So yeah, it's one of these things where it's kind of, the big publishers are vacuuming up all this content. And the other thing is, every now and then, one of these old books gets made into a film or a TV show, or like the Queen's Gambit. That was massive Netflix limited TV series, but that was languishing on a backlist for years and years. No one promoted it.
Do you know when that was written?
Man goes to Google.
We're going to consult this to Google. But it is interesting, though, isn't it? Because I think it's I've always said this on the podcast, and people who've listened to me waffle on for a few years have talked about the parallels between the music and the publishing industries, and exactly the same things happening actually to living artists right now. I mean, not a week goes by without somebody selling their entire catalogue all of their kind of publishing rights to, so like Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics, David Guetta. I mean, he's not that old. David Bowie's ones went recently. I mean, and they're going for Bob Dylan did it. They're going for like actually Bruce Springsteen was the one, the most recent one, about I think a week or two ago, and we're talking like $250 million that they're getting for their. It's basically that classic thing. Do you win the lottery? Do you want to, a lump sum now, or do you want it paid out over 20 years? And a lot of artists are cashing in now, and they're looking at kind of lifetime value of royalties going forward. So it's fascinating how it's merging into the publishing world as well.
1983, the Queen's
Really?
Gambit.
As long ago as that?
Yeah. And interestingly, I've just looking at the wiki page, the stage rights have been acquired now as well. So it's given it a whole new life. So this is the thing. You don't make money with the book; you make money with the library, and so you get as much as you possibly can. Actually,
Queen's Gambit as a stage production, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? Because it's like literally recreating, and the crowd are you. Because in the movie, there's always a crowd around the chess tower. I mean, it was a brilliant. I loved it. It's such a brilliant series.
They've also announced that there's a board game coming in, and people are going, "Is
really an official Queen's Gambit? Excellent!
Yeah,
that's
hilarious. Just chess, though.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, you know what though? If you can brand it Queen's Gambit, then it'll probably sell 10. Because you know what's happened. I mean, chess sets have gone through the roof. Sales, those and guitars apparently during and puzzles during COVID, and books as well are up because of COVID. Great news for all us authors out there. But it is interesting, isn't it? I think I love this kind of idea of a knock-on effect of things. Like you get a Netflix TV series, and now suddenly all my kids are fascinated in chess again. I bought my son a book about chess and a chess set for Christmas and he wanted a chess.com subscription. Like, I mean, he's always been into chess, but it kind of relit his kind of passion for it. So just be careful what you write about, folks, because you might be influencing millions of people around the world with whatever you latch onto. It's fascinating. Has an effect, doesn't it? And butterfly effect, they call it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What was it? Some butterfly flaps its wings in Chaos. Tokyo, and there's an earthquake somewhere else. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it's a chaos theory, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Excellent stuff. Now, Mr. Stay, I believe there's a lot of stuff happening on social media this week. Lots of good news.
Lots and lots of good news. So Kate Baker on the Academy. And Kate's not been with us very long, but she's already having great success. She's read Eek! Can't believe I'm about to type this, but Fairlight Books have been in contact this week and want to publish a short story on the short story section of their website. I submitted to them in December, and it's the piece which I shared in the One Para Punch Up last week on the Academy. So we have this thing every other month where people send in one paragraph and we'll talk about it and punch it up and try and make it better. So the story will be getting first outing, and it goes live on 10th of February. It will be exclusively theirs. There you go, the rights, and available to read for 6 months. But I retain full rights and will be able to resubmit or self-publish it after that time. So that's quite common in competitions, actually, that you retain the rights to do it. So she said, so this is great. She says, success means something different to each of us. And right now, I'm beyond excited to know that my writing has piqued the interest of a publisher. With my new direction this winter of steering my writing car towards being an indie, this feels right, because any of the website readers who do like this story will potentially follow me on my socials, which will help build the readership audience for the longer fiction to come, she says with renewed confidence. So this is great. This is, and I had a one-to-one with Kate this week because we have one-to-ones on the Academy as well. We were looking at her novel that she's finished a draft of and talking about the future. Kate, all the little ducks are slowly getting in line there, and Kate's got a fantastic future ahead. I think she's doing everything right.
It's brilliant. Congratulations, Kate. And it's so lovely. You know, the line that really jumped out for me as well, apart from the incredible success that she's having, is that success means something different to everyone. And it's so true. Like wherever you are in your journey as a writer, you define what your next success will be. And it doesn't have to be like the Hollywood movie or the number one book. It's like, writing 200 words tomorrow, or finishing that chapter, or finishing my book. And Kate's a leading light in the Academy. She's and 2 weeks now of publishing Academates. So congratulations to all of you. It's absolutely fantastic to see it all happening.
It's fantastic. And on the Academy still, Sandra Hunter, she says, I just got word that my science fiction poem, The Cryogenic Option, is to be published in Polar Starlight magazine. No firm date as yet, other than the first half of 2022. Strangely, perhaps, this whole poem is based on an extremely vivid dream. So congrats to you, Sandra, as well. That's fantastic. So again,
absolutely brilliant. And you know what, Mark, if there's one author who deserves massive success, it's Sandra. She has worked away at her craft, and she is a phenomenal writer as well. If you check out Sandra Hunter's books on Amazon, she's kind of urban fantasy, and she's a brilliant writer, and she's just one of the most loveliest people you meet as well.
She's an absolute delight. Every time I do a one para punch up on the Academy, she sends a para in, and I always love reading her extracts. Even if some of the fantasy names are quite difficult to pronounce, I have to do a little rehearsal beforehand. But she is terrific. She's a fantastic writer. Totally agree. So yes, we've got Sasha Green, former guest on the podcast. Sasha Green, she says, after being unable to write since mid-December, today I finally put pen to paper and wrote 9 pages in my notebook. If you don't have to write every day, if self-care and rest is more critical in these challenging times, but never give up on writing. And this is her response to our sort of best 200 words a day hashtag. She put down a 200 words a day hashtag. I know that's helped Sasha in the past. So great to see that you're writing again, Sasha. And Sasha is, again, a phenomenal writer. I can't wait to see what you come up with next. Brilliant,
Sasha. Congratulations.
We have a public declaration. So this is on Twitter, Inkborn Blade. So Inkborn says, I feel it's well past time for a goals declaration. So here goes. In fact, you get 2 for the price of 1. Oh. So by 31st of January 2022, which is coming up quite soon, I'll have finished my current draft. And by midnight on the 31st of July, I'll have finished my first draft of a new murder mystery crime thriller. Well, that is in the diary at Inkborn Blade, so we'll be getting in touch with you very soon to see if you've hit that first target.
Brilliant. Congratulations. And if you want, it's not too late. We're just starting 2022. I know it's almost the end of January. I can't quite believe it. But all that aside, if you've ever thought about doing a dream declaration, they work. They're scary, but they work. So, pop us a message. Tell us what you're going to do. Message us on Twitter or Facebook. Tell us what your dream declaration is, and we might mention it on the show. And if you get in Mark's diary, then you really want to be worried, because he does actually write these things down. It's quite scary. Other than showing up at your house and knocking on your door, you might get a little prod. Hello! Rapping on your window at midnight. But yeah, send us your dream declarations, folks. It works. And something we kind of launched many years ago. And we use it actually, interesting enough, it's now completely baked into the Academy. It's like one of the very first things you have to do. But it's a safe space to do it. You don't have to mention on the podcast, but brilliant stuff. So congratulations for getting that down as well.
So we've got a couple of contrasts here on social media. So Kerry Williams, who is at CNHWilliams88, Kerry says, I'm writing at least 200 words every day again this year with the bestseller experiment, because it completely changed my writing habits in 2020. So congratulations for that, Kerry. Go for it. At the other end, so Kerry's just starting out 200 words every day. At the other end, we've got Steve Gowland, who was he put this on our Facebook group. He says, I do love this bit. 152,000 words, 391 pages. Thank you, bestseller experiment. The end. And it's a screen grab of his final page. And this concludes Darkness Falls, Book 3 of The Soul's Abyss. And he's written Book 4, The Silent Darkness, will be released in the autumn of 2022, beginning Part 2 of The Soul's Abyss. So he's already putting his own public declarations in the back of his books.
I know.
That's a deadline.
Taking them on. What a pro.
So, yeah, it's
congratulations,
fantastic.
Steve. Steve's been a real constant, hasn't he, throughout this podcast? I know we've kind of followed his journey as well, but unbelievable. Like, how phenomenal is that? And we salute you, sir. You are an inspiration to everyone out there.
He certainly is. Go to scgowland, GOWLAND.com to find out more. Do check him out. And the thing that put the biggest smile on my face this week, and again, I'll put a link to this in the show
notes. Apart from Julie Walters?
Well, you know what? This is on a par. This is on a par with Julie. Yeah, this is amazing. Jan Carr on our Facebook group. Now, we talked about crowdfunding. She did a Kickstarter for a sequel, The Wonder Girls 2, The Wonder Girls Resist, which is a brilliant series set in the Second World War, and these are absolutely terrific. She did an unboxing video, which is a thing to behold. The joy on her face. It's like a minute long, and it's just her smile and joy. And she sniffs the book, so she strokes the finishes on the cover.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'll put a link in this. Do watch this, folks, because it's the moment we all kind of live for, and it's the thing that we all get excited about. So do check that out. Big congratulations to you, Jan, for doing that. It's just amazing. Absolutely
fantastic news, Jan. And yeah, interesting. Yeah, talking about Kickstarter, she successfully.
Yeah, she's
absolutely crushed it. Yeah. So that was the second one, because I know that there was one last year, I think, as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And just one other thing on social media. Well, actually, it keeps cropping up on social media. You may have seen now, friend of the podcast, Sam Missingham. She's been on a few times, and she's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. She runs a thing called The Empowered Author, which is great for marketing tips and what have you, marketing your own books. She's just launched a suppliers thing on the Empowered Author, where the questions we get asked the most in the Academy and in the Bestseller Experiment group: where do I find an editor for my book? Where can I find a cover designer? Where can I find some to do the marketing for my book? Sam is putting together a directory of all of these. I'm on there as an editor. Hello. But yeah, and our friend Julian Barr is on there as an editor as well. And, so if you're looking, and there's a particular kind of UK focus to this as well, which is quite unusual. So if you're looking for that, it's suppliers.theempoweredauthor.com, but I'll put a link in the show notes as well. So congratulations to Sam on that. I know this has been really, quite an achievement to bring all this together, and it's so incredibly useful, and people like Sam, massive positive force in the world of publishing. So
yeah, absolutely. No, Sam's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I wonder if there's agents on there, Mark. Do you know?
You know what? I don't know.
Probably not. Yeah, because I'm looking for an agent. I'd like to get an agent for non-fiction, and also I need to get an agent for this children's book, because the time's ticking. Need to get that rocking and roll. So yeah, anyone out there, drop me a note. Love to chat. You never know what comes up in these conversations. So that's excellent, Mark. Well, listen, I hope you have a fantastic week this week. It's just a bit of a roller coaster 2022. Out the gate, all kinds of fun things happening out in the bigger, wider world. But we will keep focused and enjoy the magic of writing, enjoy the magic and challenges of storytelling, and we look forward to welcoming you back next week for another episode of the Bestseller Experiment. And like we said, if you have any dream declarations you'd like to share, Mark, where can they get hold of us on the socials?
Yeah, drop us a line. Well, first of all, go to bestsellerexperiment.com. There's a contact tab there. Send us an email. We answer everyone. On Facebook, we're Bestseller Experiment. On Twitter and Instagram, we are at BestsellerXP. Just drop us a line and we'll get back to you ASAP.
Brilliant. And if you would like to get email notifications of every episode that we do, the guests that we have and what we learned from it, plus direct links to all of the episodes, simply pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com and click on the newsletter tab, pop your email address in, and look out for a weekly kind of update as to what's coming next and what's happening in the world of Bestseller Experiment. It's a great resource, actually, if you just want to keep abreast of everything. You can also save them up if you don't get a chance to listen to the episodes every week, and you can kind of go through them at your own speed as well. So join us. And we would like to also say thank you again to all of our patrons. And if you would like to join them, folks, we would very much appreciate your support with the podcast. It is simply going to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And you'll basically be able to look at all of the goodies, the extra goodies, the hundreds of hours of deep dives that you get that you won't have ever heard on this podcast. Some really incredible material there. And even join our BXP team as well on Facebook, which has the most astounding list of authors on there, and such a wonderful community, such a feel. If you're fed up with your Facebook group, too much bickering and arguing and drama, come over to the BXP team, because everyone on there says it is the loveliest place on the internet to be. And that's not us saying that, that's everyone in the group. So come and check that out if you're interested. And of course, if you'd like to go even deeper, if you would like Mark and I to become your coaches, and you get to chat with us and come on video and do coaching every month with us and all kinds of other extras, courses, etc., come and join us at the Academy. You can join today. Pop over to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com and we will see you on the other side. So, Mr. Stay, have a great week. Every success to you, sir.
You too, sir.
And keep busy, don't slack. Can't see
what I
that
didn't
ever
mention
happening.
as well is my new book, Ghost of Ivy Barn, has gone to my editor as well. So I'm waiting for feedback on that. So
Wow.
let's all go.
It's all go. Many irons in the
She
fire.
likes
And
it.
that's how it should
Yeah.
be. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant. All right, folks, have a great writing week. Join us at 200wordchallenge.com if you need to get your word count up. And have a great week. And we'll see you soon. It's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2.
Goodbye.